This morning. If you're with us for the first time, or maybe the first time in a little while, just to let you know, we're in part 6 of a 10-part kind of message series that we're calling "Take It In, Live It Out." And the reason we gave this series this title is because at the very center of the book of James, the teaching of James, is really kind of this idea. This is kind of the big idea. If we were to boil the book of James down to one statement, it would be this: application is everything. Application is everything. Here's what we mean by that. We can say we're Christians. We can show up to church. We can, attend Bible studies and life groups and read our Bibles, and we can do all those kinds of things. But if we're not applying, if we're not living out the Word of God, none of it makes a difference. It doesn't matter. It doesn't make a difference in your life, and it doesn't make a difference in anyone else's life if we're not living out what it is we're taking in, right? We can take in a lot of stuff. We offer things throughout the week through Cornerstone. There's Bible studies and life groups and different things like that, and those are all great, and those are fine. And we can plug into every single one of those, stretch our schedules so thin that we don't know if we're coming or going, go to all those things, read all the devotionals we can read, sing all the praise music and the hymns and everything else we could sing. And if we don't apply the Word of God, none of it matters. It makes zero impact in your life, which means your life will make zero impact in somebody else's. Actually, that's not true, because Scott walked us through the fact that our attitudes affect our actions, and our attitudes affect other people's actions. So if I'm a Christian, but I'm not living out God's Word, my attitude towards God's Word affects other people that may or may not be Christians. So the other Christians see it and go, well, why should I follow God's Word if they're not? Or then non-Christians go, well, why should I follow God's Word? Because they don't think it's important either. And there's all of this stuff is like, it's just intertwined and important and needful. And James kind of just gets to the heart of the matter and kind of tells us application is everything. It's everything. You can know a lot of scriptures. You ever know somebody that could quote verses? Like they just quote scripture, yet their life betrayed that? Like their attitudes betrayed what they said they knew? It can happen to all of us, and it's just important to recognize that we have to really just apply God's Word personally. All right, here's the other side of application is everything. The other side of application is everything is that tendency when there's points made about something, or we read a verse and we're like, man, somebody comes to mind, and we happen to be sitting next to that somebody, and we want to nudge them and tell them, like, hey, here's how you need to apply this. Just avoid that, whatever that is, that desire that's in you. Don't do it. Don't nudge your neighbor. Like, if you're going to nudge anybody, just hit yourself or something, because that's the other part of this application is everything, is if you aren't applying it, don't expect somebody else to, right? So that's where we're going to kind of just zero in on. So for the past few weeks, we've been looking at what genuine faith looks like, right? Genuine faith. That's kind of been the thrust of the last several weeks. So week 1, Mike told us that genuine faith fully trusts God and seeks God's wisdom in the midst of trials. That's what genuine faith does. Genuine faith goes, okay, I don't expect my life to be without trouble and without trial. So I'm going to trust God in the middle of it, and I'm going to seek God's wisdom. I'm going to seek God's perspective on it in the middle of it, right? So that's part of genuine faith from week 1. Week 2, we learned that genuine faith is a faith that understands the mechanism and the dangers of temptation and also understands we can overcome it, right? So God doesn't just tell us, hey, you're going to have temptation in your life, good luck with it. He tells us we can overcome it. And genuine faith helps us live as though we are incredibly loved. It's like, what does that have to do with temptation? The reason we bend towards temptation, the reason we go in the direction that we think is better, is that somewhere in there's something that starts to doubt God's direction for us. And when we start to direct or doubt God's direction for us, it also makes us doubt God's love for us. We believe, well, God's holding out on us, or he's holding back on us, or he's not blessing me the way I think a loving father should bless me. And so we start choosing these other directions that are against and away from what God wants. And so temptation, one of the steps to help overcome temptation is to understand you can live as though you are incredibly loved because you are. God says that he gives us his word, he gives us direction, he gives us instruction. Scott was teaching this morning, and it was such good stuff. One of the verses that popped into mind was in the book of Hebrews, chapter 12. It says that God disciplines us for our good. And that when he does that, when he directs us, when he corrects us, when that happens, it brings about a peaceful fruit of righteousness, that there's a peace about that happens as God gets us back on path, and it's because he loves us, is why he directs and instructs and corrects us, right? Week 3, Mike told us that genuine faith takes what it hears from God's word and moves it into practice, right? There again, we can't just be hearers only. You have to be doers of God's word. And if we just hear and think it's enough, James says we're deceiving ourselves. And Mike reminded us of that truth. Week 4, we learned that genuine faith responds to people, no matter who they are, with genuine love. It's impartial. Genuine faith responds to people, no matter who they are, no matter what they've done, no matter what their beliefs are, no matter what their opinions are. Genuine faith responds to people with genuine love. And then in week 5, Ryan helped us see that genuine faith goes beyond words. It compels us to action. Remember some of those verses we read that, like, hey, if somebody has a need and you do kind of the Christian, like, sidestep, by that I mean we do one of these things, like somebody comes and, like, I could really use a little, they're in need of food or clothing or whatever it is, and we kind of do the Christian sidestep. And the Christian sidestep goes something like this: I'll pray for you. When you have, like, a cabinet full of food and a closet full of clothes, that's the Christian sidestep. It's the, oh, be warm and be filled. I'll pray for you. Great, pray for them, but you may be the answer to their prayer. And God puts you in that position for a purpose. And so genuine faith moves beyond words. It takes us beyond words, and it compels us to action. So here's the thing I want us to know and understand before we go any further in today or in this series at all. First of all, myself, Mike, Ryan, others, whoever, nobody stands up on a stage or sits in front of a classroom and points their fingers out and tries to tell you how to get your life all together like our lives are all together. Because it's not. Mine's not. I struggle with a lot of the stuff we just talked about. So this isn't me saying, hey, my life is all together, now get your life together. This is God, the God of the universe, the God that gave his son for you. This is God lovingly, helpfully pointing out your blind spots and trying to help us get in the right place that we can continue to be blessed and live a life that's in concert with God's will for us. Because here's the truth. Here's a reality that you have to understand. Following Jesus will make your life better, and it will make you better at life. It just will. Your life will be better as a result of your relationship with Jesus Christ, and you will be better at life by following him. It's really cut and dry. It's simple. And I know we have all these other ideas and formulas, and out of just love, out of a place of love, and out of a place that I don't have this all together, whatever your ideas and opinions are that run contrary to what God wants for you, your ideas and your opinions are wrong. My ideas and my opinions are wrong if they run contrary to what God wants. My life doesn't get better when I start calling the shots. And I know a lot of you, your life doesn't get better when you start calling the shots. It just doesn't work that way. So this week, we're going to take another step in our Take It In, Live It Out journey, and we're going to get kind of another snapshot of what it looks like to faithfully follow Jesus. And here's kind of honest confession time. Introducing our topics or our texts for like Sunday mornings, our talks, is the most, I struggled the most in that area. Part of that, we were talking, Mike and Ryan and I were talking yesterday. For whatever reason, God, I don't know, that's just the way I work, and God's helping me figure it out. When trying to build a message or a talk, I build from the end backwards. Does that make sense? I start at the end. So we hopefully kind of God says, hey, here's where we need to get to. And I'm like, okay, this is where we need to get to. And then I start backing up, okay, so where are we at? And how do we introduce where we're going? And that's where I struggle, is the introducing where we're going. And so this morning, let me try to introduce James chapter 3 this way, okay? So this is probably going to be lame, but that's normal. So you guys, if you've been at Cornerstone, you know it's lame. It's all right. So here it is. James chapter 3, if you got a Bible app, James 3. A counselor, a doctor, and a physical therapist walk into a room. Yeah, it sounds like the beginning of a joke, right? Right. But what's interesting is the things that James he's going to talk to us about this morning are no joke. No joke at all. Actually, to begin with, James talks to us as a concerned friend and a caring counselor. Look what he says. James chapter 3, verse 1, he says this. He says, "Not many of you should become teachers, my brothers." I love how he keeps putting that in there. Not the you shouldn't be a teacher, but the my brothers. I love that. James cares, right? Not many of you should become teachers, my brothers, for you know that we who teach will be judged with greater strictness. So have you ever had a friend that cared enough to counsel you about a decision you were making and wanted to caution you about making that decision because of the implications of it? You ever had somebody like that in your life? If you don't, you need somebody like that. You need a person that is not a yes person in your life. You need a person that says, hey, have you really thought this through? Have you really considered the implications of this decision? That's kind of what James is doing here. I had the pastor I had when I surrendered ministry. I've told the story before, but I still go back to his words of advice when I told him, I think God's calling me into ministry. And you all probably can quote it. I've shared this story before, but let me just share with you what his words were. His words to me, I've had an appointment to meet with him at the office, and I'm nervous, and here's a guy that's been in ministry for, I don't know, longer than I had been alive. And so I'm going to show up and tell him how I believe God's called me into this thing, right? And so I go make an appointment, I come in, I sit down with the pastor, I'm thinking, this should be, man, I hope he hugs me and embraces me and just, maybe we sing Kumbaya because that'd be cool, but that he just kind of welcomes me into the fraternity, kind of a thing, or whatever it is. And I'm thinking this is going to be a nice meeting. I blocked off, a couple hours to sit down with the pastor and get all of his wisdom, and his words were, this was it. And seriously, there was no other conversation beyond this, which is awesome. I got to figure out how to do that, how to counsel in 5 words or less, because that's kind of what he did. He says, if you can avoid it, do so. End of conversation. That was it. There was no, however, if you can, there was no follow-up. There was no, hey, I see God working in your life. It was if you can avoid ministry, then do it. Like crickets. That's it? I blocked 2 hours out of my schedule for that? You know what? He was right. He was absolutely correct. And it took me several days of being mad at him because he didn't sing Kumbaya and hug me, and welcome me into the fraternity, and me recognizing that, you know what? If that's what God's calling me to, I better be sure of it, because there's a greater weight to that. Here's the thing. James is talking about teachers, and he's talking most specifically, and I'm not going to say only, but most specifically about teachers and leaders in the local church, right? He's writing to believers. These believers are gathered in these little assemblies, ecclesias, good Greek word. They're huddled together, and they're doing church, and they're doing life. And James is talking most specifically about teachers and leaders in the local church, and he's warning us about desiring leadership positions without carefully weighing the cost. He says, I'm going to give you a warning as a friend and as a counselor. James says that teachers or leaders will be judged with greater strictness. So it's just us. Why is that so? Why? Why are leaders judged more strictly by God? You guys can.
Because they're influencers.
Yeah, because you have a degree of influence in that role. There's a degree of influence in that. And there's an expectation for teachers and leaders to actually model the truth that they're teaching. There's an expectation there. Also, here's the other side of it. When we're talking about God's word and God's churches, God wants us to understand and convey his truth, not our opinions, not our ideas. He takes it serious. He takes his word serious. And so James is trying to help us understand that. And here's how he explains it. He kind of explains it this way. Look what he says in verse 2. He says, "For we all stumble in many ways, and if anyone does not stumble in what he says, he is a perfect man, able also to bridle his whole body." And James reminds us that no one's perfect. We all stumble in many ways. But for teachers who communicate God's word, we have to start to somehow master the tool of our trade, which is our tongues. Like Like if that's what you do and you teach, then that's the part that needs to be developed and worked and under control of some sort. So before we're going to press on through chapter 3 a little bit, but before we do that, let me see if we can kind of make 3 statements that are important for us to understand. First of all, James isn't telling people not to teach or lead. That's not what he's saying. In the churches, in our church, we need teachers and we need leaders. What he's warning us is don't rush into it without understanding the responsibility that comes with it. So he's not saying, hey, don't teach and don't lead. He's saying, understand when you sign up or you raise your hand or you say, hey, I'll lead that out or I'll teach that, understand there's weight attached to that. Secondly, James isn't promoting silence. He's proposing control. He's not saying, hey, don't say anything. He's saying, try to make sure what you're saying is under control, that it's not just your opinion being spouted, but it's God's truths and God's word. Here's the third part, and if you didn't listen to anything to this point, listen to this point. James really drills down on teachers, right, and leaders. But the reality is this is applicable for all of us. Because if you're a believer, you have a sphere of influence. So while these words, James is kind of laser, focused in on teachers and leaders, the application is still there in a wide way that say, hey, because you're a believer, you have influence. You are an ambassador of Christ. There's influence. You need to take that serious and understand the implications of it. So over the next 10 verses or so, James talks to us like a doctor, and he helps us examine our tongues. Have you ever done that? Anybody been to the doctor's office, and the doctor's like, hey, open up your mouth and stick out your tongue and say, ah. I was going to have you do that this morning, but it looked really weird. It's kind of gross. So it's kind of this weird thing, but what's amazing is doctors, and I don't know how they do it, I don't know all the science and behind it, but by examining our tongues, they're able to kind of diagnose and see a lot of problems that we may have. And so, in a sense, James is going to do the same thing for us. But first, he's going to tell us how small yet powerful our tongues are. Look what he says, verse 3, chapter 3. If we put bits into the mouths of horses so that they obey us, we guide their whole bodies as well. So James tells us that our tongue is like a bit in a horse's mouth, and it controls the direction of our lives. Suzanne could probably relate to this probably better than anybody else I can think of right now that understands, hey, when that goes in and you start to pull, they go. Or it becomes incredibly painful, apparently. I don't know. I don't want to hurt the horses, so I never want to pull too hard, but I'm told it's hard to hurt a horse, I guess. I don't know. They did try to hurt me when we rode that day, though. But I was on her when she laid down. I love it. I just got to tell you, this is the funniest thing. I've never had this happen. I'm not a horse riding dude a lot. I haven't really done it. Like the horses we got on them, and they only knew one speed in one direction because they were trail horses. They just followed the horse end in front of them, and it was like, yep, there's same behind. I'm always following. That's it. And so when we went with Suzanne, this was such an awesome day. It was like last year, wasn't it? But anyways, it was such a beautiful day. We're out riding. Cameron came and a friend, Suzanne's friend came, and we're having and we got Suzanne's horse. What was his name? Her name? Dixie. Dixie was sweet. Dixie was a trick horse. I don't know what's. No, seriously, I'm not kidding. This story will have a point at some point. So this was a horse that was trained to run into arenas, right? And back up fast, like those kind, and they spin really quick. Anyways, and so I didn't know that, and Suzanne was helping me understand that as I'm on her now, and that when I pull up and she starts doing this really quick, for her that's not stop. I'm thinking, whoa, she's like, let's go, and that didn't happen. So along the trail we're riding, we come into a beautiful meadow. It's really pretty, and we're enjoying the day. And Suzanne just so nicely and sweetly, not panicked at all, says, uh-oh. I'm like, you might want to get off. What? All of a sudden, I felt the back end of this horse just poof. I'm like, what is going on? And I'm bailing off, and the horse decided that looked like good grass to roll in. And she did. She just rolled around and then took off and started running. I'm like, I don't know how far we were from where we needed to be, but it was further than I wanted to walk, that's for sure. And I was like, okay, so ride's over. That's it. And she's like, oh no, she'll be back. I'm like, she just bolted through the woods. I'm like, and so I learned a lot of stuff that day. first of all, find out what kind of horse you're getting on before you get on it. That was number one. But she said Dixie will get to a point where she doesn't see anything she recognizes. She right? It's kind of right. So she would go someplace. She wouldn't go further than where she was comfortable to kind of get back to the rest. And sure enough, like clockwork, here she comes. It was just one of those incredible things. So, long story short, it was a good day, and that was my last ride. And so, no, it was good. The analogy James is helping us understand is that little thing in our mouths directs our lives. Just like that bit direct the horses, that thing in our mouths directs our lives. We can make our lives a lot easier or a lot more complicated based on what comes out of our mouths, right? So James is going to keep doing this comparison. So we understand the nature of the tongue, right? He's a doctor helping us understand what our tongues do and those kinds of things. So he's going to compare our tongues to a rudder on a ship. So it's small in comparison to the size of the ship, but it's powerful in its ability to determine direction. Look what it says, verse 4. Look at the ships also. Though they are so large and are driven by strong winds, they are guided by a very small rudder wherever the will of the pilot directs. And I'm not really sure, like in James' day, so we're going back 2,000 years ago, right? So I don't even know that James appreciated how significant that analogy would be in our day, right? Because James' big ships are nothing compared to the stuff. I read about a ship, a cargo ship, called the MSC Oscar. If you have time, go home, Google it. It's incredible. The largest cargo ship in the world at nearly 1,300 feet in length. And if you're like me, I can't, that doesn't, like, so it's longer than 4 football fields stacked end to end. It'll hold like 19,000 of those huge containers, those cargo containers, those huge, 19,000 of those. Any guesses on the size of its rudder? Let's throw a number out. 10 feet. And I know it's like, wow, 10 feet, that's huge. It's moving something 4 football fields long. 10 feet is about that. Maybe, well, I'm kind of shorter, I guess. It's probably something higher than I can reach right up there. But it's not that big when you consider it's 4 football fields in length. The length of that boat is longer than the Eiffel Tower is tall. So if we tipped the Eiffel Tower over, that boat's still longer than that. And a 10-foot rudder controls where it goes. That's it. James wants us to understand that just as a small rudder can determine the direction of a large ship, so can our small tongue determine the direction of our lives. So James has compared our tongues to bits in horses' mouths, rudders on ships, and now he uses this kind of graphic illustration to describe our tongue, verse 5. He says, so also the tongue is a small member, yet it boasts of great things. How great a forest is set ablaze by such a small fire. If you've been watching the news a little bit over the last several weeks in Canada, you've seen just wildfire just rage across part of the countryside. We grew up in Southern California where that was an annual thing, that somebody driving along the interstate carelessly flicks a cigarette out the window, and before you know it, thousands and thousands of acres are consumed by fire. So James warns us that just like a careless spark can burn up an entire forest, a careless word can destroy lives. Listen to how James elaborates on this idea in the next few verses here. Verse 6, he says, and the tongue is a fire, a world of unrighteousness. The tongue is set among the members, staining the whole body, setting on fire the entire course of life, and set on fire by hell. That last phrase is kind of an interesting phrase, the words Gehenna. It's where the trash heap was that continued to just kind of burn in a valley outside of Jerusalem. It's like, in a sense, James is telling us that our tongues become garbage collectors, that all the garbage that we hear and we see ends up somehow landing on our tongues. He says the tongue is a fire, a world of unrighteousness. What do you think he meant by that? Like, that's how he starts out. Tongue is a fire. It's a world of unrighteousness. What does James mean by that phrase? What do you think? I'm sorry? Wicked. Yeah, think about this, you guys. Some of the most hurtful and hateful things done are begun with words. oftentimes some of the most hurtful and hateful things are done or begun with words. They have the power to stain reputations and ruin lives. Anyone know how the Holocaust began? Words. They started describing Jews and others as something less than human. And it's amazing, the slippery slope. That if you are less than human, then the next step is you're not worth anything. And if you're not worth anything, we can exterminate you. And I know we're like, well, my words wouldn't lead me to that. You know, in the words of incredible rapper, you better check yourself before you wreck yourself, right? Seriously, it's true. Sometimes we think, well, it's just a word. It didn't have any impact. It didn't have any significance. It did to the person that heard it. It did to them. James presses further, and he identifies the problem of an untamed tongue. This is what he says. He says, for every kind of beast and bird, of reptile and sea creature can be tamed and has been tamed by mankind. And we all say, yeah, because we've all been to the zoo, or we've all been, to circus or whatever. We've seen it. We see that. He goes on. He says, but no human being can tame the tongue. It is a restless evil, full of deadly poison. James identifies something more unpredictable, more destructive, more deadly, more humanly untamable than any wild animal. And he tells us that it doesn't live behind bars in a zoo. It actually lives behind your lips. He's like, this is humanly untamable. And now James is going to help us see the incredible benefit of our words, but also the inconsistency of them. Look what he says. He says, with our tongues, with our words, we bless our Lord and Father. That's good, right? And with it, we curse people who are made in the likeness of God. That's not good. And I don't care who it is, right? Especially, and I know I'm not on my political soapbox. I don't care who you vote for, just whatever. Just vote, try to pray about it and do whatever you need to do. But there is never a place in the Christian's life where we start speaking in toxic tones about anybody, anyone. That doesn't happen. It shouldn't happen. He says, with our words, we bless our Lord and Father, and with it, we curse people who are actually made in the likeness of our Father. From the same mouth come blessing, which is good, and cursing, bad. And here's the thing. He says, my brothers, these things ought not to be so. Here's the problem. They are so. I mean, we see James going, that shouldn't be happening. Here's the reality. It's happening. It's happening. You and I are incapable of solving this problem on our own. This is a super significant problem that requires a superhuman solution. We can't control our tongues. I had it happen just the other day. I probably had it happen this morning already. Actually, I think it did happen this morning. It was like I pulled some tabs out of a book, and I didn't know those were tabs that were supposed to be in the book. And I was told, well, I don't care. It's not my tab. Well, that's stupid to say that. I should care. I wish James would stop here, I'll be honest with you, but he doesn't. I was like, okay. I don't know about anybody else. If you read through the book of James, it's just like body blow after body blow. And about the time you feel like, hey, ring the bell. I want to go to my corner. I need a cut man. He says something else. And here's what he says. He talks not only about the inconsistency of our words, but the hypocrisy of them. Here's what he says. He says, does a spring pour forth from the same opening both fresh and salt water? Answer, no, right? Can a fig tree, my brothers, bear olives? Answer, no. Or a grapevine produce figs? Answer, no. Neither can a salt pond yield fresh water. And what he's trying to say is, in nature, none of that happens, but in your tongue, in your words, it always does. Solomon says this in Proverbs 18:21. He says, the tongue can bring death or life. Those who love to talk will reap the consequences. And here's where, man, this is where it gets real for me. My job is talking. And so I feel like I always should have something to say. You know what? Not every thought I have, I know this is going to blow you guys away. Before I even tell you, I'm going to let you take a deep breath and hold your seat for a second. Every thought I have and every opinion I have doesn't have to be said. And neither does yours. Right? Our words have the ability to raise up or rip apart. They can build or they can destroy. And I've noticed in my life, when my words take that tone or take that I know what should happen and I know how this should go tone, you know what happens? Is in my mind I'm thinking, they need to hear this. But you know what happens when it comes out? I devalue the people I should be listening to. I make them feel like what they said or what they think or what they feel has no importance or value. So that's where this is hitting me. So Dr. James, right, he challenges us to give God control, not just of our words, but something very much deeper. Here, the chief resident steps in, right? The great physician steps in, and here's his diagnosis. The mouth speaks what the heart is full of. That's deep. So here, let me give you in other words. In other words, our problem with untamable tongue-itis, your problem with toxic tachophoria is this. Our words are not right because our hearts aren't. You don't have a tongue problem. We have a heart problem. God doesn't want to just change the way you talk. He wants to transform your life. And I think a lot of times we think, well, this whole Christian thing is about behavior modification. No, it's not. And I'm finally trying to get my head wrapped around it. It's about life transformation. It's about heart transplantation. That's what this is. This isn't him trying to modify my behavior. It's him trying to change me. And I need to be changed. Dr. James tells us that genuine faith, real Christianity, true surrender to Jesus is revealed by the way we talk. Here's the thing that I think all of us, if we're honest, if you're a believer this morning, you don't have to raise your hand, but be honest. There are a lot of us here this morning that are saved, but we're not surrendered. Our hearts aren't surrendered, our lives aren't surrendered, and our words are not surrendered. And that's what he wants. He doesn't want to just take you to heaven one day. He wants to transform you here on earth today, right now. He wants to start that. He wants to begin that process. He wants that to happen. So physical therapist, James, steps in, and he helps us see that genuine faith is also seen in the way we walk. And some of you know, like my former life, that's what I did for a living. I was a physical therapist. And one of the most effective ways to kind of identify people's weaknesses is just to watch them walk in that line of work. That was one of the most effective ways to start to sort out what may be the issue or what the problem may be. And I can remember there's one particular thing that became pretty obvious, and for whatever reason, my coworkers would always refer these folks to me. And you would see people walk in sometimes, and they do that. You ever see somebody do that kind of that hip drop thing? And there's actually a word for that. It's called Trendelenburg gait. You don't have to remember that. It's fine. No test. But it was one of these things where you'd see somebody walk, and you watch them kind of lurch to one side, and you think, okay, they're lurching to their left side. Something must be wrong in their left leg. There must be some, and actually the problem was the gluteus medius on the right side, that it wasn't strong enough to hold their pelvis level to allow them to swing through with their left leg. It was dipping. It was letting go. And so through gait analysis, we call that gait analysis. They'd get on a treadmill or they'd walk across the room, and we'd watch them walk and start to pick out some things in their walk that showed us some areas of weakness or imbalance or whatever it may be. And so in a spiritual sense, James does the same thing for us. In these last 6 verses, we're going to just push through real quick at chapter 3. Here's what he says. He says, who is wise and understanding among you? So in other words, who is seeking God's wisdom and applying it? Who is walking the walk? Who is spiritually healthy and growing and living it out as a Christian? Who are those people? He says, by his good conduct, let him show his works in the meekness of wisdom. James tells us that if we're spiritually healthy, if we're seeking God's wisdom, if we're applying what we're learning, then it'll be reflected in how we walk, how we do life, what we do and how we do it. He says, if you're healthy, your life, the way you walk, not physically but spiritually, is going to reveal your health or your unhealthiness. there's going to be, in essence, what James says is there's going to be good actions and gentle attitudes. That if those things aren't matching up, then there's a weakness in your walk. And here's what he says. He's going to help us see what an unhealthy spiritual life looks like. He says, let me help you identify what a weak walk looks like. One of the things, when I was working in that field, the first thing we ever had to do with a patient that was suffering from a weakness or an imbalance was to get them to understand their weakness and their imbalance. It doesn't do any good to help try to get them stronger if they don't understand the fact that they're weak. They won't do anything about it. If in their mind they're like, well, I'm doing fine, you're lurching all over the place. Your left shoe is completely worn out. It's like, wait a second, there's something going on here. Until we can recognize that and identify the fact that we have a weak walk, we won't go about trying to strengthen it. So James, as kind of a physical therapist, a spiritual therapist of sorts, kind of says, hey, let me show you what a weak walk looks like. And here's what he says. He says, if you have bitter jealousy and selfish ambition in your hearts, do not boast and be false to the truth. This is not the wisdom that comes down from above, but it is earthly, unspiritual, and then he takes it another step, demonic. We'll touch on that in a second. So in James' gate analysis, he points out the problem. He says, instead of God's word and God's wisdom changing us and controlling us, we're relying on our own human wisdom. And the problem with human wisdom is that it is rooted in self-centeredness, not Christ-likeness. When I'm making decisions that I think are good, you know what typically is at the middle of my decision-making? Me. Me. How does that hurt me? How does that help me? How does that make me look better, feel better, whatever it is? It's about me. And here's what he says. He's talking about jealousy. He says we're acting and we're reacting and we're interacting with everybody out of jealousy and selfish ambition. And here's what that looks like. I don't want to lose what I think I own or I deserve. That's jealousy. I don't want to lose what I think is owed me, what I think I deserve, what I own. I don't want to lose it. It's mine. That's jealousy. And on the other side of that, I want to make sure I gain visibility. I want to make sure I'm seen, respected, quoted, retweeted, Facebook liked, whatever that is, consulted, prominently positioned. I want all that. That's selfish ambition. In the second half of verse 14, James is telling us that we're going to have to deal with these destructive and debilitating weaknesses. He says, in essence, if you want to strengthen your walk, if you want to improve your life, then you're going to have to quit faking it and start facing it. James just like, not mincing words, man. He's like, you want your life to get better? Start facing your weaknesses and quit faking your Christian life as if you don't have any. We have to open our eyes to our blind spots, face them, deal with them as sin, because that's what they are. Confess them and seek God's wisdom. So James continues to identify the symptoms of our bitter jealousy and selfish ambition. He says, if jealousy and selfish ambition is what's weakening your walk, it's easy enough to spot, right? So we're going to start pinpointing the symptoms of a weak spiritual walk. James is like, here, let me show you the symptoms of a weak spiritual walk. He says, first of all, there's boastfulness. Maybe your version says arrogance, meaning that we quickly rationalize and justify our actions and attitudes. It's the mindset of, I'm right and here's why. Always. We will be false to the truth, James says. This means that when our walk is weak, when our life is out of balance, we will tend to try to manipulate the truth to make up for our imbalance. So let me just put this in like common, like just wrap your head around this image vernacular. It's like having a leg length discrepancy. Let's say one of your legs is shorter than the other. And instead of fixing that, like building up your shoe, you start raising the platform on one side throughout your house. So, you know what I'm saying? That's what that means. Lying against the truth goes, you know what? Instead of adjusting my life to the truth, I'm going to try to adjust the truth to my life. I'm going to say, I know I should be giving, but here's why I can't adjust the truth. I know I should be plugged in more, but here's why I can't adjust the truth. It's that kind of, I know I should be making a difference. I know I should be leading my family. I know I should do what, and it's always, and then we adjust the truth. We build up that side to make up for our imbalance, and we're all guilty of it. I do it. I'm like, yeah, but, I give a lot of my time and my energy. I just don't have, okay, yeah. Maybe God needs to step in and help me be a better time manager so I can really commit myself fully to the things he wants me to be committed to, whatever that is. He goes on and says, the wisdom that we use will be earthly, which means all it has is a horizontal perspective. That all of our decision making, all of our perspectives, our motives, our methods, all of that is just on the horizontal perspective. That's it. All we see is how does it benefit me? How does it help me in this world, in this life right now? That's all we're looking at. Earthly attitudes, earthly methods, pursuits, earthly everything. He goes on and says, your motives are unspiritual, which means we're not thinking about things from a godly perspective. It means we're not seeking his kingdom first, we're trying to build our own. So it's like your decision making is unspiritual. You're not even thinking about God's kingdom work, you're thinking about building your own kingdom. And then you're upset when it doesn't get built the way you want it to be built, or whatever it is. He says our mindset becomes demonic. This doesn't mean that a Christian becomes demon-possessed. That's not what that's saying. But it means that we have the ability to think and behave much like demons do. Remember the verse Ryan shared with us a couple weeks ago in James 2, talking about faith without works, talking about knowing about God without being changed by a relationship with God. James says this in chapter 2, verse 19. He says, you believe that God is one, you do well, or good for you. Even the demons believe and shudder. So here's the thing. What James is telling us is like, hey, you can say you believe in God. Congratulations. The demons believe that. That hasn't done anything. It hasn't produced anything in your life. And now in chapter 3, verse 15, James tells us that when we as Christians, when we operate from human wisdom, it's really no different than demon-like thinking. And here's what he means by that. You can know a lot about God, but still refuse to be surrendered to and changed by God. How do I know that can happen? I've done it. I've sat in chairs and pews just like you guys, and I could quote the scriptures, and I knew where to find the references, and I knew the right words to spit out to get everybody to think that somehow I'm so spiritual. But inside, nothing was being surrendered, and therefore nothing was being changed. That's demonic. I knew a lot about God, I just wouldn't let him touch me or change me. Get past that. James is calling us to go beyond that. Now he turns his attention, right? We're on the downhill side of James 3 real quick. He turns his attention from diagnosing our weak walk, the cause of our weak walk, the symptoms of this weak walk, and now he tells us, here's what you can expect as a result of a weak spiritual walk. So as a physical therapist, when I was in that life and in that setting, that Trendelenburg gait I told you about, gluteus medius gait, whatever they call it, eventually that would cause back problems, and eventually it would wear out your acetabulum or your hip socket. It would wear it out. You would end up with a hip replacement over time if you didn't correct that weakness and that problem. So just like that problem led to more problems, James says your problem of jealousy and selfish ambition will lead to more problems. And here's what he says. This is where it leads. This is the road you're on. If we continue to just not see this. He says where jealousy and selfish ambition exist, there will be disorder and every vile practice. It's going to happen. When we refuse to see jealousy and selfish ambition in our hearts, and when they continue to go unchecked and unresolved, James tells us that we can expect to find disharmony, instability, and pettiness. That's what these are talking about. So when there's disharmony, and there's instability, and there's pettiness, you can know that underneath that, there's jealousy and there's selfish ambition. And here's the thing about that, right? When those things begin ruining your walk, they also begin to ruin the relationships with the people you're walking with. It's going to happen. When those things start to ruin your walk, it starts to ruin the relationships with the people you're walking with. It will have a ripple effect. It will affect your families, it will affect your church, it will affect your environments, wherever you're at. Here's the however. There's a but near the end of this chapter that James wants us to know about, and it's a solution to our weak walk. Here's what he says. But the wisdom from above was first pure, then peaceable, gentle, open to reason, full of mercy and good fruits, impartial and sincere. James tells us that there's a treatment plan for our disorder, and it's found in seeking God's word and God's wisdom. James tells us what that wisdom looks like. He says, first of all, it's pure, which means our morals are uncontaminated, and so are our motives. They're not contaminated with the me first, and what about me, and how come I, and what about, they're not contaminated that way. It's a true desire to see God at work in us, and a willingness on our part to cooperate with him and surrender to him in that work, that we're like, hey, we recognize we need some work, and we're going to surrender to that. As God's will and God's word and God's wisdom strengthens our walk, it'll be evident by a peaceable attitude and gentle responses. So just think about that. If your life is always in this state of frustration, if your responses are always with an edge, whose wisdom are you relying on? What is it that's shaping your life? Because it's not God at that moment. We will find ourselves not jealously comparing or selfishly competing, but instead open to reason, which means we can give serious thought to ideas that differ from our own without getting angry or upset or feeling threatened by it. That's what open to reason means. That, hey, somebody can have a different view, and I can listen to it, and it doesn't set me off. It doesn't cause me to be angry or feel threatened. It's like, okay, I may not agree with it, but I'm open to hearing it, open to reason. God's wisdom working in our lives is evident as we see mercy on display through good fruits. This means that we have compassionate attitudes that compel us to kind actions, no matter who was at fault and how they got there. Mercy means that we're not walking around judging how people got to the place they're at. We're just compassionate to them and helping them. There's going to be good fruits. There's going to be actions that accompany the compassion. James goes on to tell us that God's wisdom working in our lives and strengthening our walk will shape us to be impartial and sincere. So he says, in other words, if God is really working in your life, there will be genuine love and authentic faith. And so a lot of us, we kind of read through this and go, wow, there's some areas where I need God to work. That's why James wrote the letter. He didn't write the letter to condemn all Christians. He wrote the letter to say, hey, there's a better way. God's way is better than your way. And the thing you have to do, first of all, is admit that his way is going to be better. And then allow God to shift me in his direction. Last verse. James, kind of physical therapist, he kind of steps back and he gives us a full picture of what our walk will look like when it's healthy. He kind of says, hey, I know you're weak right now. I know you're limping in this area. Here's why. Let's get that fixed. But when this is all healthy, when you are strengthened, when you are balanced by God's word and God's wisdom, here's what it'll look like. He says, a harvest of righteousness is sown in peace by those who make peace. In other words, a life that is right with God and a life that's relying on God is a life that is at peace with itself and with others. That's what he's saying. That if you're right with God and you're relying on God, there's going to be an inner peace within you, and there's going to be a peace with others. So we're going to wrap up. Let me give you 3 takeaways. Maybe those will serve as 3 prayer points. First of all, reject worldly wisdom. Reject worldly wisdom. Identify and avoid those things that seem to compel you to push and pull and compete and complain, because that's the way the world works. That's the way the world works. Secondly, request and receive godly wisdom, right? Back in James 1:5, James told us that if any of us lack wisdom, we need to just ask God, who will generously give it to us without refusing, without rebuke. God never gets upset when we go, God, I need wisdom in this, and I truly are seeking it. He never goes, are you kidding me? I can't believe. He says, no, please ask me, and I'll give it to you. In a world that tells us to push our way to the top or pull others down if you have to compete with people who show much more than others, the better, the richer, the smarter, whatever, those kinds of things. And in a world that complains when things don't go our way, godly wisdom tells us there's a better way. And it's a way that's pure, and it's a way that's peaceable, it's a way that's genuine, and it's a way that's gentle. He says that's God's way. If it's not pure and peaceful, if it's not gentle and genuine, then it's something other than God. If you're always on edge, always having to get the next, I have to stay in front. I have to push to get my way. I have to pull people back. If that's your approach, James says you need a new approach. Finally, reach out to and be renewed by the one who is the source of wisdom. Quit trying to do life in your own wisdom and in your own strength. This is for all of us. This isn't me pointing at you. Quit trying to do life in our own wisdom and in our own strength. First of all, you're not smart enough and you're not strong enough. And I know you're like, wow, we come Sunday to get encouraged. I'm encouraging you. You're not smart enough and you're not strong enough. You is not smart. You is not strong. No, and it's not, I'm not trying to degrade you. What I'm trying to help you understand is we have an amazing Father that says, I'm here for you. I have all wisdom and I have all strength. Will you please rest and rely on me? That's what he's saying. I'm not pointing at you and picking on you. I'm just saying the reality is we always think we have a better way. We always think, well, if I say that right now and I get my point across, then they're going to see it and they're going to understand it and they'll bend and see it the way I do. Really? Or could you say it and possibly blow up a friendship? Could you come across like that and possibly blow up a relationship? Do you know that God's probably much more interested in your relationship than in you being right all the time? He is. Quit trying to do life in our own wisdom and our own strength. Instead, surrender to God's wisdom. Take in His word. Live it out in His strength. Because He's the one that can help us talk the talk and walk the walk. He can help us do that. Let's pause and then we'll pray, get you out of here.